Just wanted to welcome everyone to our second webinar of Florida 101. We're just going to go through quick housekeeping really quick. We are hosting these webinars the same time every week through the end of August. This week is, of course, Ralph Mitchell. We'll introduce him later. We're going to be recording this webinar and posting the recording to YouTube. So if you missed some of these, you're welcome to go onto our YouTube channel, which is UF IFAS Extension Charlotte County, and you can watch the recordings. Everybody is going to be muted through this. You can certainly participate and ask questions in the question and answer box. And so at the end of Ralph's presentation, we will go through those questions and answers for you. So the webinar is 30 minutes. We'll have time for questions and answers. And then at the very end, there will be a poll. If you don't mind, it's a very short poll. If you don't mind just taking a minute or two to do the poll for us to see how we can, what you learned and how we can maybe be of assistance to you in the future. And with that being said, I'm going to start introducing our speaker, which is Ralph Mitchell. He is the UF IFAS Charlotte County Extension Director and the Horticulture Agent. He's been here over 20 years, and prior, I think it's going on 25 almost. And prior to that, he was at Cornell University. Next week, we'll have Ellen Pinder from Charlotte County Emergency Management. So hopefully you come back next week, and I hope you enjoy the class today. With that, I will hand it over to Ralph. Except I can't hear you, Ralph. Ralph, still can't hear you. Jody, is it just me or?
No, I can't hear him either. I don't think.
No. Maybe it's your headset?
Try making him a host.
Let's see. See if that works. Ralph, does that work? No.
Okay, I've unplugged my headset.
Yes, that worked.
Oh, no. Okay, but I can't hear you, Sarah. Oh, wait a minute. I can't hear you, Sarah.
You can't hear me?
Okay. Am I good to go?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Because I can't hear you now, but that's okay, as long as everybody's hearing me.
Yes.
So welcome, and I wanted to be talking to you today about things that you should not be touching, and I picked these as just a sample. They're not in any particular order as far as severity or concern as to should you be touching these at all or not. I just wanted to put it down because they just came to mind as things that typically people are concerned about and want to avoid. Oops. Keep in mind that we've been here 88 years, which I think is interesting as far as Charlotte County Extension Service. So we're a long-held tradition of educational excellence. And here we are. So, welcome to Southwest Florida. It's a wonderful place to live and work. And it's unique. And look at us, looks like we're out in the ocean here, it looks like. And with that comes a lot of different creatures and plants and such that you may not have encountered in places you lived elsewhere. And we're here for the the warm temperatures, the subtropical, tropical plants, and just because it is a very different place, very different from any other place in the United States. But with it comes all types of little interesting things. And, I'm going to look over 22 different life forms that you might want to avoid. And these are things, again, not to touch in general. And that's just a good common sense thing. And so in no particular order, let's start with number one, which is the imported fire ant. You think that we do have a Florida fire ant, you think, oh, that's not good enough. Let's get the imported brand. So it's been here for a very long time, came in accidentally, and has spread throughout the southern United States. But certainly we've had our share of it. The picture in the middle you see with the arm, that was a classic picture that was used to show how bad it could be. The gentleman had stopped on the side of the road to change a tire and laid down to do that, didn't see it, and the ants got all over him. And the fire ants sting. They don't bite. What they do is grab a little piece of your flesh and then insert a stinger into you, and that causes the little pustule. They tend to get on you and then through a little chemical signal sting you all at once too. They can have multiple queens. As you can see on the far right, there's a little circle of ants, and within the same colony you can have all these different sizes, which makes them very unique. Control wise, we generally recommend any of the baits that can be used in landscapes. But for places that are edible, like a vegetable garden, a lot of people will have fire ant problems, and we recommend spinosad as a control for that. In general, you can win the battle, but you'll never win the war on these. I mean, they're everywhere, and they're just going to continue coming into your property on and from time to time. So just be looking out for them. Again, avoid contact with them. And I'm sure you probably have experience, because I have just recently. All right, number two, stinging venomous caterpillars, which, at a glance, they look very colorful and interesting and nice. The top left is the saddleback moth caterpillar. The one in the top middle is the IO moth, and the bottom one is the puss caterpillar. There's others too, but these are the ones most people will see. And I'll say out of all of them, probably the IO moth, the one in the middle with the green and white and red stripe, is most common. They feed on things like palms, but hibiscus too. The adult is a beautiful silk moth, and she'll lay eggs on the host plants. The babies will hatch out and sort of hang out together for a while, and then they disperse. But you'll find that those little green tipped hairs are not soft at all, but they're hollow ampules with a little point at the tip that will break off into your skin and release the toxin, which is this horrible burning, stinging sensation. Perhaps the worst one, though, is the puss caterpillar at the bottom, where and the puss caterpillar is generally in hardwoods and oaks and things. It looks like it should be petable. It looks like a nice little furry thing, but underneath those hairs are the stinging hairs. And people have been sent to the emergency room with the puss caterpillar. So that's something not to fool with. I have not been stung by any of these at this point, because I've seen them and avoided them. But like the IO moth there, caterpillar, it can hide in plain sight, and you might be a little late before you accidentally touched it or brushed up against it. I knew one person that got it into their clothing and didn't know it, and it was working up their arm, stinging them. They thought they were having a heart attack. So anyways, these are things to avoid, and they're venomous, and not saying people will be killed by it, but certainly the fiery sting and the pain, and some people could be allergic, of course. Number three is the velvet ant. The velvet ant is not an ant, but a wingless wasp. And it's interesting because it looks like an ant, but it has a stinger like a wasp, and they're in the same family, of course. The one you see there is a female there, but if you were to encounter her, The stinger is quite large, very painful, I hear. I've never been stung. I don't even know anybody who's been stung, but you can see from the colors that the colors are warning you to stay away. The males, which are seldom seen, do have wings and they don't have a stinger, so they can't sting you. But I find most of them in more dry, sandy areas again, where other ants are living. If you, I'm saying you should pick one up. If you ever pick one up, they will make a little squeaking sound too, which is a little bit creepy. But because they're sort of rare and randomly found, not a big concern. They have been called cow killers though, because the story is that a cow will accidentally eat them in some hay or some forage, and it will sting their tongue, swell up, and dies. So anyways, the velvet ant, again, is a wingless wasp. Don't touch. All right, number 4 is the wheel bug, and the wheel bug is a real bug. In that it's the same family as stink bugs. You would actually probably put it in the category of an ambush bug. It's a beneficial insect, actually, because it feeds on pest insects. It's good size. It's probably 1.5 inches, maybe to 2 inches. Very big, hulking thing. And you can see on the right-hand top picture that crest, and it's got little knobs off it. That's why they call it the wheel bug, because it looks like the cogs of a wheel. Now, although it is a beneficial insect, and it doesn't want to hurt you, if you picked it up or accidentally encountered it, that front beak you see on the top of the head there, or the base of the head rather, is a stabbing beak, and it will plunge that into you and give you a bite like you've never had. And it may take 2 weeks to heal. Not going to kill you, but the pain from that is one of the worst, because it will inject saliva of some type that causes quite a bit of pain. So leave it alone. It's a beneficial, and it's something that you should respect. All right, number 5, Africanized honeybees, which I could talk a lot about here, so I'll try to restrain myself here. But we've had these in the area for 20 plus years. When they first came in, there were a couple of attacks. Somebody who's doing surveying over off of Harborview at our old office got 300 stings in the mouth and nose. They did not die from it, but that was probably the worst that I'd seen. And at a glance, you can't tell if they're Africanized or not. And what they've done, of course, is interbred with the European. The Africanized honeybee nature is more aggressive. They get angry quicker, and they stay angry longer. They'll chase you further too. They'll chase you 300 yards. And if you try to avoid them in a pool, they'll just wait till you come up, take a breath. So our recommendation is run and run and run, find some kind of cover, and stay in there till the attack is over. As you can see on the left-hand side, they have some unique places they make their nests. One is an abandoned grill, which is sort of unique there too. And the upper one is a electrical box. So you'll find them in smaller, different lower areas, such as utility boxes on the ground, sometimes bird houses, different strange places that you wouldn't expect a European type honeybee, one of the cultivated ones, to go into. We don't recommend you try to control them at all. There are professional people that will either, based on what you want, eradicate or catch and remove them and requeen them to eventually make them all European. I would say over the years, though, although they swarm a lot, that the calls of concern from people have reduced as far as also the aggressiveness. But with any of these, you don't want to be kicking them or ticking them off. They found that sometimes even like a high-pitched whining sound, like from a weed whacker, may be the frequency that triggers their attack. And definitely don't be trying to control them yourself. Any of the wasp or hornet sprays, will actually cause a bigger attack to occur. So it's nothing you want to be fooling with. And if you have a colony on your property, it's something that it could be a liability for you too. So you want to make sure to take care of that. Right, number 6, blood-sucking cone nose, also known as the kissing bug. You can see almost like the wheel bug, it's got that beak, sharp stiletto-looking beak, and it is a bloodsucker of mammals, rats, rabbits, raccoons, possums, and people. There's been cases of people being fed upon by these. They come at night, and they will, because they're also called kissing bugs, feed on near your mouth where it's very soft. The wound or the bite is itchy and gets red, and they can be controlled for certain. And fortunately, not here, but further south into Central and South America, they can carry a disease, Chagas disease, but that's not a problem here. Just be looking out for it. Our widows, we have a number of widows in the area. The top left is the brown widow, and that is not a native. It was accidentally brought in from, I think, North Africa or the Mediterranean area. Note the little egg sac has little protuberances, and that's a sign that they are there. They're sort of a creamy white to a matte black with an orange hourglass. The center one is the black widow, a little bit more cryptic and hidden areas. The strands of web are very strong, and you'll find that they will come out and defend their web and try to bite. The one on the right is the red widow, which I've only seen pictures of. I know they are in the area, but you'll find them more in palmetto scrub type settings and not around houses so much. Number one way to let them get controlled is wasp. Mud daubers and such will sting them and use them for provisions for their young in their little mud tubes there. So those are our 3 common ones. All right, thing I want to say about brown recluse, number 8, we have no native populations in Florida. People think they've been bitten by them, and that they can cause a necrotic sore to develop that has to be cut out, doesn't heal properly. They can come accidentally, though, from northern states just above Florida, often through cargo, or they had a case where there were rugs coming from a factory in Georgia, and they were in there. So no native populations. It's hardly as big as a quarter, has 6 eyes instead of 8 eyes, and has a little fiddleback on the head, but you'll find that, again, there's been no cases of people actually being bit by native populations here. So I guess that's good news. Here's another thing that people may mistake for a brown recluse is the huntsman, number 9. Huntsman spider is a good-sized spider. And when you see it at night at 3 in the morning running at you in the kitchen, you'll probably not favor it very well. But it's harmless, other than it can bite, it can inject venom, which would hurt, but it's not going to be medically significant unless you're allergic. However, it is an excellent predator of cockroaches, so that's what it's doing in your house. So I would say leave them alone, let them do their job, because think how much it would cost you to get a drone that did this type of work. So pretty much a normal resident of your house, so just leave them alone. And they may be running at you, but they're just trying to get you. They're just trying to run away. So leave them alone. All right, scorpions. Now we do have a couple scorpions in our area, and I'll say a lot of this, what I'm talking about, are things that you'll find in the area. The one on the left is the Florida bark scorpion, pretty good size, probably 3.5, 4 inches. And the one on the right is the Heinz striped scorpion. Both will give you a sting, and it will hurt like a bee sting. But unless you're allergic, they're not medically significant, and they're nocturnal. They're not all that populous, from here to there. People have brought them to me over the years, but I've rarely encountered them. So, but the sting on them, it does hurt. Number 11, twig ants. Now, twig ants are sort of a unique thing. They are an ant, but again, they have a stinger like a wasp. They're often called neck biters because as you're working outside, they'll often fall down into your collar, and then you'll feel something around and you'll squish it and they'll sting you. And the sting is pretty sharp. They're probably barely quarter to a half inch, very narrow, very different behavior than you would think for an ant, almost wasp-like. They make very small colonies in the opening of hollow stems of plants, and they're predators otherwise. So they're not really after you. It's an accidental sting when they fall into your clothing there. So twig ants are very common, and you'll see them almost every day of the year. Number 12, centipedes. And centipedes, there's some sizable ones here. This is, I believe, they call the blue centipede. Probably could be 3 to 4 inches. A normal resident of mulch or compost areas, but it's a hunter. It's a hunter and a predator, and the front legs are modified into venomous fangs, and that's the part that can hurt you. Not only are they creepy looking, it can really move around and are very mobile and fast. If you get bit, and I've been bit twice, it puts a blister-like burning sore. It doesn't last that long, but it's nothing you want to handle, and it will always be an accidental encounter, I'm sure, here. But keep in mind again that it's just part of the landscape, and you may never even see one. All right, I want to switch a little bit to plants that can hurt you here, things not to touch. And number 13 is the heartleaf nettle. The heartleaf nettle is a stinging nettle. It was really more of a pasture weed, but then started cropping up in home lawns, and people started bringing it in. What is this? And this particular plant has tiny little hairs, again, sort of like a stinging caterpillar. They're hollow and have an irritating material in it, so they will sting you. They're also called fireweed too. So, there's a lot of other plants that look like this. It tends to be sort of a low-growing plant, scalloped leaves, and but it is starting to crop up, so to speak, in area landscapes. Here's another one, poison ivy, number 14. Now, we do have poison ivy, and but we don't have poison oak. And I don't think we have poison sumac in this area, but we have plenty of poison ivy. And of course, it can take on the form of a vine or a low shrub. Tends to be very glossy colored. It's almost any natural area around, you're going to find them. And keep in mind that even dead poison ivy can have the oils in it, and can cause problems for, I think, up to a year. So you want to be careful about that as far as handling that. Often people will use some kind of a non-selective herbicide to treat it, get it out of there. But you're always going to wear protective gloves if you're handling. All right, another one here is oleander. And oleander is a common landscape plant, and one that people like because it has beautiful flowers. It's original from the Mediterranean, but was brought here. It's very good for dry areas, takes the heat very well, takes some cold too. But the problem is the sap is very toxic. And if you're working with them, always wear gloves. Be careful not to get the sap on you or into any mucous membranes into your mouth or eyes. There's always been cases of people accidentally poisoning themselves with that by not knowing that that is a concern. And as it is such a common landscape plant here, there might be more accidental encounters than you would think, but the sap is the main thing. But as I'll mention at the very end too, wear good gloves, whether you're working outside and the soil or a mulch pile or with plants. Good heavy work gloves are always going to be helpful to protect you and keep you from these things you shouldn't be touching. Okay, another one, number 16, is the pencil cactus. Very common succulent that people like, and it's a beautiful plant. It really doesn't have what you would say true leaves, but a lot of tubular branches that are green or sometimes a colorful red tinged. when they're broken open, you'll see a sap that comes out of them too, and it's that sap that is really of concern. We've had 2 cases come to our office where one guy he didn't know it either. He had grown this as a hedge, and then he took an electric clipper and clipped it, and the sap went all over the place and caused a lot of damage to his eyes and had some skin rashes. So be careful of that. It's a nice plant, but look out for the sap. Rosary pea. This is an invasive vine, a category 1 actually. Beautiful little seeds on it, but one seed is toxic enough to kill a child. But they'd have to crack it and digest it and such. It's a very hard seed, but another thing not to be touched. Southern SANDBUR, again, between us getting it in our socks or bleeding our fingers, sometimes little dogs get on this. It's an annual grassy weed, and you can either use a pre-emergent, which kills the seeds in February 1st, or you can actually, I've heard, dragging a burlap bag over the area to pick up all those pointed stabbing seeds, which look like little medieval maces. All right, getting down to the last here, some of the venomous snakes. Now, the question is, how many poisonous snakes do we have? We have none. They're all edible. But we do have, at least in Charlotte County, I think it's 4 venomous snakes. And number 1 is cottonmouth. This is the one I've seen the most common in our area. They are near water. Their main foods are fish and frogs, but they will not hesitate to bite you. They do have that white cottony mouth, and they will, expose that as a warning not to get any closer. I understand they give off a scent too, but they're very common in near ponds and lakes and waterways and such there. So be looking out for them. This is the worst one, I think. Number 20, the Eastern Diamondback rattlesnake. It just has such power. It's a big snake, up to 8 foot around here. The venom of this and the cottonmouth too destroys tissue, and it just injects a lot. It's best to keep away. Of course, they're going to rattle to keep you at bay. They're very well camouflaged though, and their main food source around here are rats and rabbits. Eastern coral snake, very much of the time, is hidden. It will tend to be in natural areas under mulch or leaves in wooded areas. Its number 1 food source though are ringneck snakes. But this is more related to cobras, so it has a nerve venom. But I don't know how many people ever really gotten bit by this. They could, but it would have to chew into you a little bit. But remember, black on yellow, kill a fellow, and all those little rhymes. Remember it. There are some snakes that mimic this too, but this is around here is probably semi-common. And the last one, I think here, number 22, the pygmy rattlesnake, which you see on the left. I've not seen one in the wild, but they're small, 18 to 24 inches. But the snake on the right, you see, is a baby black racer. And that's what most people bring in, because the baby black racer is born or hatched out with the coloration of a pygmy rattler. So it gives it that, at a glance, concern. Plus, the baby black racer also will put on quite a show. It strikes, it moves its tail around. And so it puts on a show. So most people are bringing the baby black racers into us. They are non-venomous. So what do I say here? As I mentioned, I didn't spell that right. Wear leather gloves when working outside. Know your surroundings. Become familiar with the local fauna and flora. And then check with us if you have any questions. A lot of it is just risk management, knowing that these things are around. They're not everywhere. But to be able to avoid them or to coexist with them is the way to go. And this is only a sampling. I can certainly comb out more things not to touch. But this is something that I thought most people would be familiar with, or not familiar with, but should be familiar with. And this is something that's commonly brought to our attention at our office. So thank you.
Ralph, can you hear me now?
I can't hear you, Sarah.
You can't hear me? Jody, can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay, there's some questions. Would you mind asking Ralph those questions since he can't hear me?
Sure. Ralph, are you able to hear me?
I can't hear you or Jody, but I'm gonna look in the chat box
Okay,
myself.
that may be our best
and
bet
see
then.
That'd be
what
good,
I
thank you.
see here. Hang on. I thought I saw one. Do oleander caterpillars sting? They do not. Those are just fuzzy little pieces of tuff or hairs there that are not venomous. I suppose it could tickle you or maybe irritate, but it's not venomous. Another one, I've heard coral snake skin is highly toxic if you pick it up. I've never heard of that. I would finding a coral snake skin really hard to find. And so I've not heard of that. And so I'm going to say no to that inquiry. And it looks like you have the poll to do.